My name is Elijah Carter. I was born on a freezing January night in Detroit, Michigan. I have fragmented memories of that time, but most of them are gray, cold, and heavy like the basements of the old houses in my neighborhood. When my mother had me, she was barely old enough to take care of herself, let alone a baby. My father, I never met. I was told that he disappeared shortly after I found out about the pregnancy. Or maybe he was just another shadow in a world where light was rare. I grew up surrounded by screams, slamming doors, and indifferent neighbors. At 7 years old, I already knew how to heat food myself, hide bruises, and shut up when something seemed wrong. But it was also at 7 that something different happened. Mr. Jenkins, a strange and lonely neighbor, asked me for help carrying some boxes to the basement. I obeyed. And there below, surrounded by lit candles and strange symbols on the floor, he looked me in the eyes and said something I've never forgotten. "You were born seeing what others don't see." That night, I had my first real nightmare. I woke up in a cold sweat, with the name Elijah whispered repeatedly in my ears, as if an invisible presence was calling to me from somewhere I couldn't see. And this happened again. Nights and nights with voices, figures, and hooded figures reaching out to me. Instead of running, I started waiting for them. School was a place where I just existed. He wasn't noticed, he wasn't liked. While the other boys played basketball or talked about video games, I hid in the library, reading anything that involved spirituality, magic, protection. One day I found an old book about the occult in a used bookstore on Grand River Avenue. It felt like he found me, actually. It was as if those pages whispered, "Here is what you are looking for." My mother disappeared when I was 11. He went out to buy cigarettes and never came back. Nobody looked for her. The social worker showed up once but didn't come back either. I went alone. It was there, in that heavy silence, that I began to speak to the darkness of my room. At first it was like a joke. Then I felt answers, small signs, cold touches in the air, objects changing places. I was 12 years old when I performed my first ritual. Nothing elaborate, just a candle, some words I read in a book, and a very clear intention. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be protected. I wanted to have power. Little did I know that at that moment, the door opened, and something on the other side also saw me. At 13, I was no longer a scared child trying to understand what was in the dark. I became part of it. My eyes began to see things that no one else saw. Shadows that moved in the corners of the rooms, voices that whispered the names of people I didn't even know, and who, days later, appeared in the news. It was like something was training me, as if I were chosen. At school, other teenagers avoided me. Some said I was strange, others just felt chills when they passed me, and to be honest, I liked that feeling of control, to cause fear. For once, I wasn't the weak one. I was the mystery, the danger. I started getting involved with an online group of teenagers interested in the occult. Some were just joking, but others knew what they were doing. One of them, who called himself Vincent and said he lived in Louisiana, introduced me to more complex rituals. We started talking every night. We exchanged symbols, invocations, experiences. He said he had found a mentor in New Orleans who was part of a tight circle, and that this circle was observing young people with potential. I had no doubts. I wanted to be part of it. At the turn of 15, I received an invitation to go to New Orleans. I invented to the social worker that I would spend the summer with a distant uncle, a lie, of course, and bought a bus ticket with the money I earned, selling some things that disappeared from a local store. It was in that city, between the smell of incense and the dank alleys of the French Quarter, that I dove in head first. Vincent took me to an old house, hidden between narrow streets with almost no lighting. Inside, a group of adults waited for me in silence. There were black candles, markings on the ground, and an energy that made the air seem thicker. In that ritual, they asked me for just one thing: total surrender. I accepted, without hesitating. That night, something entered me. I don't know how to explain. I felt powerful, invincible, and at the same time, empty. It was as if a new version of me had been born, and the old one had been buried there in that stuffy basement. I came back to Detroit different. People noticed. Some crossed the street when they saw me. Others began to follow me, seeking advice, protection, guidance. And so at 16, I became something I never imagined I would be, a spiritual guide to other lost young people. I brought them together in secret meetings, led rituals. I made promises that even I didn't fully understand. The scary thing is that it worked. Things happened. Orders were fulfilled. Someone's pain passed. Another's revenge was accomplished in a few days. And the more I did, the more I felt like I was rising, that I was being seen by something much bigger. But what I didn't realize was that little by little, I was also being consumed. I was 17 when I returned to New Orleans, this time drafted. Vincent just told me, "They want to see you. It's time." I took the first night bus alone with a light backpack and a heavy heart. Part of me knew that after this trip, there would be no turning back. I arrived on a sultry late afternoon, with the sky covered in clouds that seemed to weigh down the city. I was taken straight to an old mansion on the outskirts of the Garden District. From the outside, it looked like just another house forgotten by time. Inside, it was a temple. Walls with carved symbols, altars with objects that I didn't know if they were art or spell, and a presence so strong that it made me break out into a cold sweat, even without moving. They received me in silence. 4 hooded figures, standing around a circle drawn on the ground with salt blood and charcoal. They didn't say my name, they just pointed to the center. I entered without hesitation. My body was shaking, but it wasn't fear. It was expectation. It was as if my soul knew that moment had been written long before I was born. The ritual began with chants in a language I didn't know, but which my mind seemed to understand. They asked me for a personal offering. I took out of my pocket a locket that belonged to my mother, the only object I had left of her. I burned right there, smelling the memory going up in smoke. Then one of the leaders approached with a knife. He made a small cut on my hand, letting the blood fall onto an ancient symbol carved into the floor. When the blood touched the symbol, I felt something snap inside me. A raw, untamed energy shot through my chest like lightning. My eyes burned. My ears rang. I fell to my knees, but not from weakness, it was reverence. Something had come down to me. Something recognized me. After that night, I was officially accepted into the circle. I received a new name, which I cannot repeat here, and with it came promises. Power, protection, influence. I was the youngest among them, but also the hungriest. They gave me old books, some handwritten, and began my advanced training. There I learned to manipulate people, energies, even events. I learned to use suffering as a tool. The pain of others became my fuel. And the worst? That gave me pleasure. Each ritual, each symbolic sacrifice, made me feel less human and more beyond. I was consulted by business people, artists, even politicians. Nothing very visible, of course, but they came to me. They wanted blessings, protection, success, and I charged a lot. Money, yes, but also other things. Things that today I prefer to forget. I spent the next few years between New Orleans, Atlanta, and Los Angeles. Where there was power and darkness, there I was. Each city had its secrets, and I became the guardian of many of them. But the higher I climbed, the emptier I felt. It was as if the soul was fragmenting. With each ritual, each night, something inside me died a little more, and even though I was surrounded by people, luxury, and influence, I was completely alone. On the outside, I was just another successful young man. He wore tailored suits, drove imported cars, and attended gala events in Los Angeles. I introduced myself as an energy and spiritual consultant, someone who helped people align their inner strengths. No one imagined what really happened in the silent early mornings, in the isolated forests of Georgia, or in the forgotten basements of decaying mansions in Savannah. The truth is that I lived 2 lives, one under the light of cameras, and another in the depths of ancient rituals that would never be accepted in the light of day. I was called to specific jobs, destroying competitors, breaking up marriages, protecting fortunes. Sometimes they didn't even ask the price. The fear my name carried was enough. It had a small, silent team. Loyal people, but broken. People who, like me, had been swallowed by the darkness too soon. Each of them had a role in the rituals. The tracer of symbols, the bearer of the elements, the channeler. And me, always at the center, the one who opened the way. These rituals were not little plays with candles and pretty words. They were real. I saw people go into deep trances, speak languages they never learned, predict deaths that happened days later. I saw bodies shake with presences that no one saw, but that were there. And the scariest thing was realizing that the more I did, the easier it became. I started carrying specific objects with me, a consecrated ring, a necklace with carved runes, and a notebook that never left my backpack. In it, I wrote down names, dates, symbols. It was my personal grimoire, my book of power. No one but me has ever touched it. Full moon nights were sacred. On those nights we gathered in hidden places, forests, ruins, abandoned houses. The air at these ceremonies was different, heavy, alive. Often, before we even started, the animals around us would disappear. Silence took over, as if nature itself knew what was about to happen. But even with all this structure, there was something eating away at me inside. I started having recurring nightmares, not about demons, but about a light, a presence that called me, who repeated my name but with pain, with a love that I didn't understand. I woke up crying, alone, not knowing if that was a threat or a warning. Once, in the middle of an important ritual, I had an off-script vision. I was in an open field surrounded by smiling children. A man in white walked up to me and said, "It's not too late, Elijah, but it will be." That phrase echoed in my mind for weeks, and the more it echoed, the more the rituals lost strength. It was as if a crack had formed in the wall between the two worlds, and for the first time, something outside was entering mine. I started making mistakes, forget symbols, confusing dates. My concentration was easily broken. The energy that previously flowed freely now came heavy, as if it was charging me for every drop. And deep down, I knew something was about to happen. Something big, something that would change everything. I had money, it had influence, and I was afraid. On the outside, I was respected, feared, even admired. People looked for me as if I were a bridge to the impossible, but inside I was a desert. He slept on silk blankets and woke up with his soul torn apart. I ate in expensive restaurants, but I had an anguish that no dish could disguise. There were nights when I woke up panting with my chest tight, feeling like something invisible was suffocating me. It was not an external presence. It was me. I had become the prison that held me captive. And the saddest thing? I knew. I started wandering around empty houses I bought in small towns. I sat on the living room floor, surrounded by sealed boxes and covered windows, just to escape the noise of the world and the noise inside me. I started hearing whispers during the day, not in rituals but in traffic, in cafes, in line at the supermarket. Voices saying my name, remembering the boy I was, the one who just wanted to be loved, the one who one day asked for help and was ignored. People around me started to notice. One of my oldest assistants, Marcus, looked at me during a ritual and asked, "Are you still there?" It hit me like a blade, because I didn't know anymore. I started having panic attacks, tremors, sudden dizziness. Doctors said it was stress, but I knew it was something beyond the body. It was the collapsing soul. In one of these episodes, I fell in the bathroom of a hotel in San Diego and hit my head. I was unconscious for a few minutes. When I opened my eyes, I saw for an instant the same man in white from my dream. He didn't say anything this time. He just looked at me, and it disappeared. It was at that moment that I realized the power that I thought I controlled had been controlling me for a long time. Maybe you who are listening to this now have also felt this emptiness, this feeling that even though you have everything, you have nothing. If this has ever happened to you, write here in the comments, "I've felt this emptiness too." Maybe your story starts here too. Maybe you need to look inside and listen to what the silence is trying to tell you. That night was strangely silent. I was driving along the Pacific Coast Highway, returning from a meeting with an important client in Malibu. The sky was clear, but there was something in the air, a tension, as if time was waiting for something. The car glided along the dark road, its headlights cutting through the pitch black ahead. I was alone, or at least he thought he was. I remember looking in the rearview mirror, and for a second, seeing someone sitting in the back seat. I turned quickly. Nothing, just emptiness. I tried to take a deep breath, but my chest felt tight. I picked up my cell phone to change the song, and it was at that moment, in a fraction of a second, that everything happened. A bright light appeared in front of me. A truck crossed the road without me having time to react. The impact was dry, brutal, deafening. I felt my body being thrown against the steering wheel. The glass shattered. The world spun. Everything turned red, then black. Silence. I can't say how long I stayed like that, but suddenly I was standing outside the car. He looked at the accident scene as if he were a spectator. My body was there, trapped in the hardware. People ran, screams echoed. But I didn't feel pain, I didn't feel anything. Just a strange cold and a confusing peace. Then something started to happen. A low hum filled the room, and a dense darkness began to envelop everything around me. I tried to run, scream, get back into my body, but it was as if my feet were sinking into invisible mud. A force was pulling me. It wasn't physical, it was spiritual, as if something was claiming me, something I knew well, that had been waiting for me for years. I started to fall, not like I'm in a hole, but like I'm being swallowed by myself. I saw faces, I saw hands, I saw soulless eyes, I heard distant screams, laughter, and in the middle of it all, a deep voice whispered, "Now, you are ours completely." It was at that exact moment that, in the middle of the darkness, a spark appeared, small, almost imperceptible, but real, a light, a presence, and before I could understand what it was, I was pulled away again, not down, but up. And that's when everything started to change. I can't explain how or when, but suddenly everything changed. One moment I was plunged into darkness, being dragged by voices that seemed as old as time, and the next moment I was floating in a space where there was no ground, no sky, just light. A light unlike anything I had ever seen. She didn't hurt. It didn't blind. It was hot, engaging, alive. I saw my body still trapped in the car's hardware, doctors trying to revive me, people crying outside. But I didn't feel despair. I felt distance, as if that body was no longer mine. Suddenly I began to be pulled towards the light, not with fear, but with a peace I had never experienced. It was as if for the first time someone was actually waiting for me on the other side. And then I heard it. A voice. Simple, deep, and at the same time, absurdly familiar. She said, "Elijah, I've always been here." I looked around, trying to understand who was speaking, and then I saw him, a figure in white, with the most serene and penetrating eyes I have ever seen. He didn't condemn me. He didn't accuse me. He just saw me, completely, with all my flaws, pains, wrong choices. And yet, it was still there. He reached out his hand, and at the touch, my mind was flooded with memories. Every ritual, every lie. Each time I ignored that voice that tried to warn me. I saw the children I helped divert, the people I hurt. I saw my own face transform chapter by chapter until it became something I barely recognized. I started to cry like I've never cried before. And he said without thinking, "I don't deserve to be here." And then that figure responded to me with the phrase that has become the center of my life to this day. "You never deserved it, but I came for you anyway." At that moment, I felt something break inside me. It was as if all the layers I had built to protect myself, the pride, the power, the control, were melting beneath that love that stripped me completely bare. I knelt down, even though there was no ground under my feet. And he approached and said, "You still have a choice, but if you return, your mission will be heavy." Everything shook around. I started to feel my body again. Pain, heat, voices, machines. And before opening my eyes, I heard one last time, "Tell them I am real." And then I came back. When my eyes opened in the hospital, the first thing I saw was the white ceiling, but I still felt the warmth of that presence. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't delirium. It was real. So real that my entire body was still shaking. I was silent for hours. Nurses came in, doctors said things about miracles, inexplicable recovery, but I didn't listen properly. My mind was fixed on that moment, in that look, in that voice. Jesus. I know the weight of that word. I know how much it divides opinions. How absurd it may sound to many, but it was him. There is no other explanation. It was not a generic being of light. It was not an energy. It was a person, a presence, a love so overwhelming that it made my entire soul implode. In the days that followed, I began to remember more details. In the hospital, in silence, I relived that encounter. He showed me scenes from my childhood, not the ones I remembered with anger, but the ones where he was there and I didn't notice. When I cried alone in the dark room, he was sitting next to me. When I was taken to the basement of Mr. Jenkins' house, he tried to warn me. When I did the first ritual, he cried for me. And then came the most painful part. He showed me the lives I touched, but not in the way I thought. He showed me a girl who attempted suicide after a ritual I led, He showed me a man who abandoned his faith after a consultation with me. It showed broken families because of spiritual aids that seemed harmless but opened doors to destruction. I tried to look away. I asked to stop. I asked to delete everything. And he just said, "I show because I want to restore, not to punish, but to heal." I cried like a child, alone in a hospital bed in Santa Monica, surrounded by machines, but visited by the author of life himself. He then told me something that changed everything. "You have two options. You can come now, or go back. But if you come back, you will carry this truth with you. You will speak out, you will face ridicule, you will lose everything you have built, but you will save many." I was silent, and in that instant, I understood. The same free will that led me into darkness now called me into the light, and I chose to return. The following night, still hospitalized, I woke up in the middle of the night with a feeling of heaviness in my chest. It wasn't physical pain, it was like someone was calling me again. The presence I felt in the afterlife came back. The room was silent, the lights off, but something inside was different. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, and then I heard it again. That voice, Clara, strong, no need for sound. It crossed my thoughts, as if speaking directly to my essence. "Elijah, you will return to the world, but it will never be the same." I tried to get up, but my body was still weak. Still, something in me lit up. He continued, "You will speak of me without fear, without masks. Many will not believe it. Some will laugh, others will persecute you, but some will listen, and for those, every wound is worth it." At that moment, my mind was flooded with images. People crying in front of computer screens, young people tearing up occult books, families reconciling. I even saw small churches being awakened, rekindled because of a testimony, my testimony. But I also saw the other side. Mockery, threats, closed doors. I saw friends walking away. I saw looks of contempt. I saw my old spiritual family performing rituals against me. I saw my bank account emptying. I saw loneliness, the resignation, the cross. And then came the final message, the strongest, the most shocking. You were not saved because you were special. You were saved to serve. Your pain will not be forgotten. It will be a tool. You will be an open wound to heal others. I didn't know how to react, how to explain that to someone. How can I leave that hospital and tell the world, I died, I was with Jesus, and he gave me a mission? But something inside me had already changed, forever. Before disappearing, he just said, "You will tell the world I am real, and I'm coming back." And it was with this phrase engraved in my soul that my journey of redemption began. When I was released from the hospital, I didn't go home. I didn't even know where home was anymore. My old apartment in Los Angeles was full of memories that burned my soul. My contacts disappeared, customers disappeared, and in a way that's good. I didn't want to be found either. I took an interstate bus with the little money I had left and headed to the most unlikely place, Arkansas. Why? Because a Christian lady, a nurse at the hospital where I was admitted, looked me in the eye one day and said, "You need to rest where the earth still breathes faith." She gave me the name of a small Christian community in the countryside, between forests and mountains, and that's where I hid, or rather I was welcomed. I arrived as a stranger, a scarred, broken, visibly tormented man, but no one asked me questions. Nobody judged me. They just prayed with me. They gave me food, a simple room with a wooden window and a cross hanging on the wall. The first night, there was the first in a long time that I slept without nightmares. In the following days, I cried like never before. I confessed everything, from the first ritual to the darkest secrets that I carry to this day. And with each confession, I felt the burden dissolve, slowly, like someone digging the soul with their bare hands, removing stone by stone until they find the root. I spent months in silence, reading only the Bible. Each verse was like a scalpel cutting through old wounds, and at the same time, a balm healing what I didn't even know still hurt. I got baptized on a cloudy afternoon. The waters were cold, but my heart burned. When I left there, I felt something I had never felt before, lightness. True, but the real regret was not just emotional. It was practical. I started returning everything I had stolen. I donated clothes, occult objects, books, symbols. I burned many of them in a bonfire behind the church. The flame rose as if something spiritual was finally being broken. I asked for forgiveness from whoever I could find. I knelt before fathers, mothers, children. Some forgave me, others spat on the ground, and I understood. It was fair. I understood that true repentance is not just a feeling. It is a path, a journey of humiliation, reconstruction, and truth. And it was on this path that I found life again. A simple life, but real. It was almost 2 years away from the spotlight. 2 years among trees, simple services, and sincere hugs from people who wanted nothing more than to see my soul heal. But there came a moment when that voice spoke to me again. Not a voice of judgment, but of impulse, of sending. Now speak. And that's what I did. I recorded a simple video, sitting on a wooden bench with the Bible on my lap, and my breathing still marked by everything I had experienced. I told my story from beginning to end. No filters, no cuts, with tears in my eyes, said names, I mentioned places, admit sins, and at the end, I looked at the camera and said, I was an instrument of darkness. But today I am a messenger of light. Jesus is real. He brought me out of the hell of my own making, and he can do the same for you. I posted the video and turned off my cell phone. 3 days later, it had more than 2 million views. I started receiving messages from all over the world. Young people trapped in the occult, mothers desperate for their children, ex-Satanists looking for forgiveness, even pastors who had lost their faith. They all wrote to me. It wasn't about me. It was about the hope that my fall had revealed. It was as if my destruction was paving the way for invisible reconstructions. I was called to speak at churches, conferences, even on Christian TV shows. But every time I went on stage, I trembled, not out of fear of speaking, but because I knew that behind every face in the audience there was hidden pain, an unanswered question, and perhaps there, in my testimony, someone would find a point of light. Of course, it wasn't all acceptance. Many called me a liar, a heretic, an opportunist. They said it was all an invention, that I was just another guy trying to make a name for himself with Christian horror stories. But it didn't affect me, because I knew where I came from, and I knew who saved me, and the fruits were there. Young people tearing up pacts, burning books, giving up dangerous practices, parents reconciling with children, lives being transformed not by me, but by the one who gave me a voice. Every word I said was an open wound, and each wound was an invitation for someone to heal. Today I understand. My past has not been erased. He was redeemed, and that's why I speak. Because if he reached me, he can reach anyone. 5 years have passed since that night I died. 5 years since my eyes saw Jesus. Since my soul was plucked from darkness and sent back to life with a weight on my chest and a mission in my heart. Today I write these words not as a former wizard, nor as a speaker, much less as a hero. I write as someone who has seen hell and lived to tell about it. A lot has changed. I live simply. My name still carries marks, both of admiration and rejection. But I carry it with honor, because it was in this tarnished name that Jesus wrote a new story. I'm no longer afraid of the dark. She still surrounds me sometimes, tries to pull me back, whispers lies in my ear. But today, I know the truth. And the truth has a name. Little by little, my body began to fail. Doctors said it might be something neurological, a consequence of the trauma of the accident. I know it's more than that. I feel like my journey here is coming to an end. And that's why I recorded this last video. Not to go viral, but for the record, while I can still speak, that Jesus Christ is real, that his love is stronger than any ritual, pact, or curse, and that, no matter how far you've gone, there's still time to come back. Darkness has no power over those who find the light. If you've made it this far, I ask one thing: don't admire me, don't follow me, look to him, seek him, cry out to him, and he will answer, because that's what he did to me. And if this story touched your heart, leave your comment, share. Not for the spectacle, but because perhaps among your friends or followers, there is someone about to fall where I fell, and you can be the hand that points the way out. I am Elijah Carter. I died, and I came back with a single truth. He lives, and it's coming back. Getting here was not by chance. Something inside you awakened. Maybe it was a memory, an old pain, or a voice you tried to ignore for years. But now it is impossible to deny God is calling you. And when he calls, it is because he is about to transform. It is at this point in the story that everything can change. When you feel that something changes inside, it is because a new stage is being triggered. Subscribe to the channel now and walk with those who understand that real transformation begins with a step of courage. When God truly touches someone, that person needs to leave a sign. Comment below, I heard the voice. This simple phrase could be the lighthouse that someone lost in the darkness needs to see right now. Every transformation begins with a simple choice. Leave your like now and help this message reach those who are about to experience the same awakening that touched you. The next video that appears on your screen is the continuation of what has already started within you. Watch now. Your journey doesn't end here.